Good evening, beautiful people, or good morning, depending on when you're listening in to this podcast. This is the Mose Knows podcast. It's your boy, Corey Mose. I appreciate you for listening in or watching if it's on Spotify, cool little feature there. Of course, on YouTube as well, or Apple Music, depending on where you're coming from. I just appreciate that you're here. Big time matchup this Friday as Texas takes on Texas A&M, and I got a big slate of guests and things that I'm going to be discussing on this week's podcast. To talk about the matchup, we're going over enemy lines with Tyler Shaw from KBTX out in College Station. He's a sports director out there, so he'll give his perspective about the A&M side of things. But then also I figured, why not? It's a big week, so let's bring in the big dogs. Eric Henry from 24/7 Sports is going to talk about Texas as well. So I discussed the matchup with both of those guys. So excited for y'all to hear that conversation. And as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify right now, I'm not in my usual location. I'm at the crib. I'm in Houston, Texas, or more specifically, Pearland, Texas, at my parents' house. I'm here for Thanksgiving, so thank you, KB, for giving me the time off. And got some awards back there. If I turn the screen a little bit, you can see. Mic just dropped. You can see all the awards back there on that back wall. And then you can also see the awards that's above me right now. If you're watching, none of those awards are mine. All of the awards are my sister's. I have like a little corner over here to my right, but all the big time awards, yeah, that's all them on the track. And so every time I come home, I'm just reminded about how much of a failure I was in the athletic department in the Mose household. I'm joking. I was pretty decent, but my sisters were nice though. I will give them that. But yeah, so I'm back at the crib. And so with me being back at the crib, that means we may have a score prediction from Mama Mose. We may have that. We may have that later in the show. So we'll see if she's down to make a little score prediction. But for right now though, I do want to start with the news that came out Tuesday night. Of course, college football playoff rankings. New rankings came out. I got some thoughts. We'll discuss them, and we'll move on after that. But let's just name the top 16, because Texas is ranked number 16 with the new poll. And so starting with number 1, of course, is Ohio State. We're moving down to Indiana, Texas A&M, Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, BYU, Miami, Utah, Vanderbilt. For some reason, Michigan jumps Texas and is now number 15. And then Texas ends number 16. So a couple thoughts here. I think when it comes to the college football playoff, when you determine in the G5 getting a spot and the ACC champ getting a spot, Big 12 champ, of course, gets in. You already kind of have that with Texas Tech. I think you have to get to about the number 10 position when it comes to these standings. I think if you get to number 10, you're good to go making a playoff. So right now, that number 10 spot is Alabama, which if they win in the Iron Bowl, well, we all know, though, if you remember the kick six, we all know anything can happen in the Iron Bowl. So you just want to assume that they do win, then they get in. Same thing with Oklahoma. They did themselves a huge favor by beating Alabama a couple weeks ago. And so now all they have to do is win out. Now, a little bit of a scare last week with Missouri, kind of, but Missouri's offense isn't that great right now. But if they go out and beat LSU, they'll be 10-2, and I think that locks up their spot. So I do feel like if Oklahoma and Alabama wins on Saturday, they're in, which then makes it difficult for Texas to even get to number 10 to get that last spot. Now, LSU, always a tough out. We don't know what's going to happen with that matchup. And let me check real quick as I have all of the schedules up right now. I believe it is at Oklahoma. I am confirming that right now. Yeah, it is at Oklahoma. So it'll be, if LSU wins at Oklahoma, that'll be big time for Texas. And I think they would have that tiebreaker, Texas would, over Oklahoma if they have 3 losses. But let's assume Oklahoma wins. Let's assume Bama wins. They're both 10-2. I think they both get in. And that kind of just shuts the door for any shot of Texas getting in unless, and this is where I think things could get sticky. I look at Oregon at number 6. Oregon is 10-1. Great record right now. But if they lose to Washington, which I'm a big fan of Washington. I'm a big fan of Damon Williams Jr., the quarterback for the Huskies. Saw him at Manning Passing Academy. He's electric. It's at Washington, by the way, one of the toughest environments to play. Let's just say Oregon loses that game. I know some of y'all may be thinking there's no way Oregon's going to lose that game. We don't know. Oregon had a lot of dudes out when it comes to this, the wide receiving core. DeCorian Moore has been injured. They have a lot of dudes that are injured when it comes to the skill positions. And so let's say they do lose to Washington. I think that opens up the door for Texas because of this. Who has Oregon beat? Who has Oregon beat? If you look at their schedule, they have a loss to Indiana. That's their only loss right now. But they have an overtime win over Penn State. And then they have a 2-point win over unranked Iowa. That sounds a lot like a win over Kentucky and a win over Mississippi State to me. If we want to discuss the type of wins that they've had. And then, of course, they beat USC last week, number 17 USC, which is a semi-decent win. But that will be their best win all year long is a number 17 ranked USC. They lost to Indiana earlier in the year. They thought Penn State was going to be another big win for them, but we all know how that season's been going on. So now you have a 2-loss Oregon team in this situation with their best win being a number 17 USC and a loss to Washington. I think that bodes discussion of if they should be in. I really do think so. Now, eye test wise, I feel like, yes, they are arguably a top 12 team in the country, eye test wise. But if we're looking at strength of schedule, if we're looking at strength of wins, Oregon's not in the conversation compared to a Texas. Now, funny enough, I brought up Texas. I know some people are probably rolling their eyes right now if you're listening to this pod about how could they even have a shot to get in. And honestly, the media asked Sarkisian this on Monday about what will it take, or will an A&M win get them over the top and into the playoff? Here's what Sarkisian had to say about that question.
Do you think with a win you deserve a spot, and are you concerned at all about the defense by opposing teams putting a bunch of points on the board?
Okay, you jumped around on me right there. I'll say this. I'll talk about that after the game. If we're fortunate enough to win the game, I'll talk about that after the game, because I think that would be a better platform.
Okay, so Sarkisian's not going to answer it until after or if they win against A&M. And since he's not going to answer it, I'll answer it for him. I think there's a legit conversation with Texas. I really do think so. I think if you go line by line, team by team, assuming that, let's say in this scenario that I mentioned earlier, Oregon loses to Washington, Texas' argument, which I'm sure this is going to be Sark's argument after the game, will be we have beaten top 12 teams. We have beaten top 15 teams. We have that on our record. And he will be right. If you beat A&M on Friday night, you would then have a win over the number 3 ranked team in the country and a win over the number 8 ranked team in the country, along with a win over the number 14 ranked team in the country. That's 3 top 15 wins. Now, of course, the counter argument is you have 3 losses. One of those losses being Florida. But like I just mentioned, Oregon, one of their losses would be unranked Washington. So apples to apples, oranges to oranges. And then you go down the line, right? BYU schedule, they lost one game. That one game was to Texas Tech. But then who have they beat? They beat a Utah team, which, by the way, let's look at Utah's schedule, who's number 13 in the country right now. Utah has beaten nobody. I when I say nobody, I mean nobody. Their best win, Utah, is a number 20 ranked Arizona State, who, by the way, during that game, Sam Levitt wasn't playing. They played Jeff Sims, the backup quarterback. That is their best win. Utah is winning over a 20-ranked Arizona State squad with their backup quarterback. They haven't won anything else. All the other wins are all unranked and a big-time loss to Texas Tech. And so then you look at BYU, it's like, well, if BYU's best win is against that Utah team, who I just mentioned has no good wins except for an Arizona State squad with a backup quarterback, then how good is BYU? How good is BYU? Do we really know? And so, yes, I understand the argument of they have one loss. But if BYU goes to the Big 12 title game and then loses to Texas Tech, they would now have 2 losses. And so the question is, does a 2-loss BYU team with no good wins, except for over a Utah team who's beaten nobody, are they really better than a Texas team that has 3 wins over top 15 teams? I don't know. And then we can keep the ball rolling with Vanderbilt. Yes, Vanderbilt will have a win over Tennessee if they win on Saturday, but that would be their best win. Mind you, they have a loss to Texas. They also have another loss to Alabama. So the 2 teams that they played in the top 10 or top 15, they've lost to. And so what is their strength of schedule? What is their strength of wins? Of course, they have 2 losses compared to Texas' 3. But again, the argument is Texas has better wins. And I think that's what Sarkisian is going to try to fight for if they beat A&M on Friday. Lastly, Michigan. Oh my gosh, don't get me started with Michigan. Because a lot of Big Ten people have been hitting me up, texting me about Michigan being a team that needs to be considered. And so let's play the game. Let's play the game. I'm down to play the game. If Michigan beats Ohio State, that's a big if, by the way. If Michigan beats Ohio State, they have a shot to get in. At home, at that point, they would have a win over Ohio State, and they would have a win over. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. They would have a loss to Oklahoma, which common opponent, Texas beat Oklahoma, but then they'll have another loss to USC. Not a great loss. Not a great loss at all. And so 2 losses, 1 to Oklahoma, 1 to USC, but you have that big time win over Ohio State. So Michigan at that point will have 1 win that is legit over the number 1 team in the country. Respect. But again, in this scenario, Texas would have a win over the number 3 team in the country, who is also undefeated. So to me, that cancels out. And then you factor in Texas having a win over Oklahoma, a common opponent with Michigan, and then you have a win over Vanderbilt. I understand what Sark is going to say on Saturday or Friday night. If they win against A&M, I totally get what his argument will be. It is, we have beaten 3 top 15 teams. And the third loss that we have is to the number 1 team in the country at the beginning of the year. And so are you going to punish us? This is Sark talking. Are you going to punish us for scheduling that game and losing that game, which, by the way, was really tight? It wasn't a blowout. So I see it. I see what Sark is going to try to argue. I understand what he's trying to argue is that out of all the teams in the top 16, Texas has the best wins by far. It's not even close. It's not even close. We go down the line. Again, Vanderbilt. Their best win would be a number 19 Tennessee if they win on Saturday. Michigan, their best win would be Ohio State. Great win. But Texas still has 2 other wins in the top 15 that Michigan doesn't have. Utah, their best win is against Arizona State with a backup quarterback. When you talk about Miami, Miami's not good. If you watch Miami, I just don't think Carson Beck deserves to be in the playoff. They would technically want me to make the ACC title game if SMU takes care of business. So it'll be SMU versus, let me check. My apologies. It'll be SMU versus Virginia in the title game. If Miami beats Pittsburgh. If not, Pittsburgh gets into the title game. So you're telling me if Miami wins, knocks Pittsburgh out, SMU gets in, a Miami squad deserves to get in because they beat a Notre Dame team and a Pittsburgh team with losses to Louisville and losses to SMU? Again, Texas has better wins. BYU, who they played? Utah. Utah ain't play nobody. That's BYU's best win. Alabama, they would get in this situation. Oklahoma would get in this situation. And in Oregon, we go back to that conversation. Their best win will be against a USC team who's ranked number 17 outside the top 15. They will have no top 15 ranked wins, Oregon that is, if they lose and become a 2-loss team on Saturday when they play the Huskies. So I get it. I get what everyone's saying. You can't lose to Florida. I get it. I understand it. I respect it. But you can't tell me there's not an argument for Texas depending on what the committee cares about. And if I'm the committee, I would care about who have you beat. I'm the type of guy who I wish the playoff didn't have a committee. I wish we had a play-in on championship week. I wish we had number 1 seed versus number 2 seed in the SEC. I wish we had the number 3 seed versus number 6 seed in the SEC and the number 4 seed versus number 5 seed in the SEC. I wish we had a tournament-style play-in to get into the playoffs, but we don't. So in this situation, who have you beat? I understand who you lost to. I get that argument, but can we discuss who have you beat? And Texas has the best record when it comes to teams they've beaten if they were to beat A&M on Friday. So that's my big thing right now. Now, that's assuming, and that's just throwing out a scenario of if Oregon loses to Washington and Oklahoma and Bama wins. What if Bama loses to Auburn? What if LSU finds a way to beat Oklahoma and Oregon loses? We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But I will say, if Michigan beats Ohio State too, that could happen. We all know how that history's been. So there's a lot of things that can happen from Friday to Saturday. And I'm excited to see how this all plays out. I think if everything is chalk, if everybody wins who's supposed to win, of course, Texas doesn't get in. But if there's a couple losses in there, I don't think there's a lot that needs to be done because, again, you can make the argument that Texas has the best wins out of everybody in this top 16, and it's not even close. Now, they have one of the worst losses in Florida, but a lot of these other teams also have bad losses. Like I said, Miami lost to Louisville, and then Oregon would have lost to Washington. I just feel like there's a conversation with Texas. People saying there's no shot. I don't believe that, and I don't think that's real. I do think it's a conversation, and it should be louder conversation in my eyes if they go out and beat A&M Friday night. So to discuss that matchup, though, I'm going to toss it over to my guy Tyler Shaw. We discussed it earlier today about this A&M Texas matchup on Friday, the Lone Star Showdown. Listen to his interview with us as we discuss this game. All right, beautiful people, we're now going over enemy lines with my guy Tyler Shaw, the sports director for KBTX. Tyler, man, big week Lone Star Showdowns going on in Austin. First off, what are your thoughts about the rivalry? Of course, you were there last year at College Station, and so what does it feel like having this rivalry kind of like every year now?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Corey. It's definitely something that was long overdue. I mean, it was something that was never going to happen once A&M left the conference, and they couldn't. They were never going to play each other out of conference. That just did, as much as fans would have loved it. I think they should have kept the rivalry going. I mean, Georgia Tech teams do that all the time. Florida State out of conference, they keep the rivalries alive. I think they should have done that all along. But I guess the plus side of all that, of having that 13-year hiatus, is you could feel all the built up tension, and just kind of that little bit of hatred, that still resides between Texas A&M and Texas. There's not many rivalries like this, to be honest. When you have families and households that are split down the middle of A&M Texas, and just your neighbors and coworkers and everybody's got a side in this state. So having it back, it was electric. It was awesome. You could feel it at the start. Now, the game itself, honestly, was a little bit of a dud.
Yeah, it was.
I mean,
It was.
Texas goes
Defensive
up 17.
showdown.
Texas goes up 17-0, and there's not a lot of life in that stadium. Kyle Field, and then A&M actually shuts out the Longhorns in the second half. So even in the second half, there's not a whole lot of action other than the pick six to give A&M a little bit of life. But so the game itself, what wasn't the best, but the atmosphere around it, everything leading up to it, was awesome. And I think the fact that it's back and where it should be, probably on Black Friday, kind of this rivalry weekend, I think is awesome. And then this one is going to be special too, because it's the first one back in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And A&M kind of had a bad taste in their mouth the last time the Longhorns came into College Station. They beat them. Well, the last time A&M was in Austin, they won. So this is both sides going to have a lot to play for.
Yeah, you speaking about both sides. I mean, one side in particular, A&M, is for a shot to go into the SEC championship game, you got to win Friday night. And so I did want to kind of backtrack a little bit because you talked about the game last year. We were both there. I tell people all the time, that was the loudest stadium I've ever been to. It really was. And you spoke about how much of a game it really wasn't. It was kind of like a dud a little bit, and it was still loud. And so that's why I'm just like, from your perspective, was that the loudest you've heard, the 12th man, or has there been another kind of game that stands out to you?
Yeah, it's always hard to do superlatives because I'd have to put it all in a box and listen to them back to back to back. What was the loudest? Because that was definitely up there, one of them. But there were other moments I've heard, like the LSU game last year, I guess.
That Marcel Reed's coming out party, right?
Yeah, that was Marcel Reed's coming out party. It was the comeback that A&M had. LSU was ranked 8th at the time. So that was probably their biggest moment last year, was a win over a top 10 LSU team. And that was kind of they had the all black uniforms, which
Mm-hmm.
before Mike Elko got there, they didn't really do a whole lot of alternate uniforms with Jimbo. So it was something different and special, and it was a blackout at Kyle Field. That was a loud one. And then I think, just recently, but a few years back, the 2021 Alabama, when they beat number one Alabama, and A&M was unranked, had no business beating them. Probably the loudest pop I heard was there was a kick return for a touchdown. So I would put any of those three games up against each other. But yeah, you're right. Kyle Field, it's an impressive atmosphere.
It's crazy, bro. It's crazy,
and it doesn't matter what's going. I mean, most teams, if they're down 17-0 to their rival, I mean, they're kind of out of it. But
Yeah.
these fans weren't. And even this year, they just played Samford, a really bad FCS team. They won 48-0. That's usually one of those games. Yeah, you watch at halftime. That was fun. Like, this is getting boring. We're playing our fourth stringers right now. Most of the stadium stayed. I go back to the week before, South Carolina. They were down 30 or 27, no, 31 nothing
nothing.
At halftime, or 27 nothing at halftime. No one left at halftime. They come out of the locker room second half. They're all, no one actually expects them to pull that off. I mean, I don't think anyone realistically, you think you're going to, score 28 straight points and pull that comeback off, but they were there supporting them. So, yeah, it's the 12th man. They're a passionate and a loyal fan base for sure.
Well, can I ask you about that? You brought it up, so let's ask about that South Carolina matchup, right?
Yeah.
Because when I'm watching it, I'm thinking, here goes A&M again. You have a great year. The team you're not supposed to be losing to, and not only are you losing to them, you're getting blown out at home.
Right.
And like, to me, growing up in Texas, knowing the history of A&M, like, that's kind of what they've been. When they have expectations, they don't really rise to that. And so getting that win, coming back in the fashion that they did, having a shutout in the second half, how important was that win, do you feel like, for that team and the way they won that game?
Oh, that was huge. I think for the confidence of they've proven this year they can win in multiple ways. They're 11-0, and so they are in the mix for being one of the top teams and going on a deep run in the playoff. But it's not because they just look dominant each week and they look like the best team in the nation. It's just they are finding ways to win, and that was a way that they've learned to finish games. Last year, their biggest knock was finishing games. They kind of seemed to teeter off in the fourth quarters. I think back to last year's South Carolina game where they just could not finish that game. They lost by 24, and then they couldn't finish the season either. They start out 7-1. They lose their last 4 SEC games. Play their way out of the championship game. It's a completely different mentality this year, and just kind of the way they're built. So I think it was just huge mentally for them that, hey, we can do this. And the fact that Marcel Reed stayed poised through it all, because that was probably the worst half of football I've ever seen him play.
Yeah.
It was one of those that was like, well, he's kind of on the cusp right now. It's kind of a weird Heisman race, I think, but he's one of those guys.
No one's really taken that step. Quick side note, if we can, like, who would you have right now?
No, I was just going to say, with Marcel, he still has an opportunity to win the Heisman. Even though maybe people don't think he's a Heisman right now, but if there was any possibility he's going to win the Heisman, that first half, I think a realistic thought would be, well, there goes the Heisman. There's this guy, it does not look the part. But then it's confusing because he flips the script in the second half and looks amazing and throws for almost 400 yards. So it's like, okay, well, he's got that guy's got the it factor.
Yeah. Would he be your vote right now for Heisman?
See, that's hard. I don't know if right now it's hard to say. Okay. I would maybe go Fernando Mendoza. He's been really consistent.
Same.
But like you said, there's not. I think this is one of those races that's going to be decided after the conference championship games, because I think Mendoza, would probably be number one right now, and he still has a chance to have more Heisman moments with, let's say a win over Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. But Marcel's a chance to prove himself if he goes out in Austin and beats the Longhorns and looks the part doing it, and then goes on and wins an SEC title. Marcel might put himself as the front runner. So Yeah, it's kind of hard to say who my vote is right now because I really think it's just gonna be decided in these next 2 weeks.
Hey, I will say this though. I wish more love for Jacob Rodriguez is out there, man. I'm a big Jacob
Yeah, we need a
Rodriguez
defensive
guy.
player
I mean, he's
for the
balling
Heisman.
right now for Tech.
He is. He is.
So I would just want
And
to throw
this
his
might
name
be the
out there.
year that you have kind of that. I guess last year we had Travis Hunter,
Yeah,
two-way player, but yeah, this would be the year for a more non-conventional Heisman because it's not usually it's decided by now, and you can kind of
exactly.
tell
Yeah,
who the Heisman is.
at least the top three. You don't even know who the top three is at this point.
No, because then there's Jeremiah Love,
Yeah,
running
I
back
mean, you
Notre
could throw
Dame.
Julian Sane up there if you really want to.
Julian
You
Sand.
know,
I mean, kind of hard to knock an undefeated quarterback.
yeah,
So
you know.
yeah, it's a weird race. So yeah, we'll see. I think with Marcel, if he wants to be a finalist, I think he's going to have to do it in Austin here. I think he's going to kind of cement his case. Yeah.
So let's talk about that game a little bit because the reason why I like to have a lot of guys on and a lot of women on that are in the cities or cover the teams is because y'all are at the press conferences.
Yeah.
And I heard your press conference with Mike Elko. Heard your question. Great question, by the way, asking about Arch Manning.
He
Kind of
didn't like to say.
short answer, by the way, from Elko. He didn't want to really dive into Arch. But what did you take away, not just from Elko, but from everyone that talked on Monday? Did anybody stand out? Was there a particular player that said something that perked your ears up? What stood out to you on Monday?
So what stood out to me was that there wasn't a lot said, and
Mm.
it was very calculated. Mike Elko's always been a very open guy. He doesn't really sugarcoat things, and he'll speak his mind. He's not like a Lane Kiffin or anything where he's just gonna go off. But he's very kind of poised about everything. But he's very open. That was I don't want to say uncharacteristic, but it was
Mm.
very calculated. He came in, he knew what he was doing. He was not going to say anything. And I don't know if it's just he's afraid of bulletin board material getting out there, or he's just laser focused, or he's afraid about this matchup. I don't know, but it was a little different because he had nothing to say. Because I listened to Sark's presser, and he seemed
Oh,
to
he
give
talked.
he talked. He gave a lot of he talked about Marcel Reed and that
Yeah.
offense, and he went through. But anytime you asked about Texas, Elko was just they're a great team. It's gonna be it's gonna be a tough battle.
Mm.
Arch is a good quarterback. He runs like he gives a lot. He probably gave more answers on like Samford players than he did Texas. So that was my biggest takeaway is
Yeah.
just the feeling in the air. It was tense. He just did not want to talk. I mean, he wasn't rude about it or anything, but he was very just short answers. The players though, so we got our Maj Reed Adams,
Mm-hmm.
offensive lineman, who if people don't know who he is, he's the guy with the chair. So he's the one that comes out of the tunnel, and he has a chair that he puts every opponent that they've beaten so far, like their sticker or something, on that chair, and he
Gotcha.
comes
Yeah.
out and he'll smash it as they're running out of the tunnel. So he's just a fiery guy, a personality guys that gets you pumped up. So he talked, and Will Lee talked, who had that pick six, the only person that scored for A&M last year
Yeah.
against Texas. Which those are the only two guys that talked. Very different than Texas. I know that you guys got like 6 players or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jealous of that side note, but
Hey, let's not. We can go apple for apple because we already know the access that y'all get compared to the access that we get. You talk about one-on-ones, that's not even a thing in Austin. We can't even. You want to sit down with a player? Oh no, that's not. You crazy. You're crazy. So yeah, I understand money is cool, but like the access is completely
Can't do
different.
that. All right.
Yeah, and
That's
I
fair.
heard Will Lee talk, and he mentioned about. And I like how someone asked him, "When's the first time you like really started to hate Texas?" And he was like, "Oh, back in Kansas State."
Kansas State, yeah.
Which I was
Yeah.
like, I forgot he was on that team.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like all the guys they kind of are starting to realize. I think last year helped a big factor about
Oh yeah.
the importance of this game, especially the guys that aren't from Texas. And so I think that's something that we discussed too in Austin. It's like how many of these guys kind of like know the history and how much it means to people in the city.
Right.
And so I'm interested to know from y'all's locker room, what kind of was that answer like?
Yeah, so I mean, last year especially because a lot of these guys, were too young to even remember when this
Yeah.
rivalry was played. So, but the guys that are from Texas, they would hear it about it, and but I think living it last year helped not only in the game itself, but leading up to it, because it's one of those, as an athlete, you always hear, you got to block out the noise. Well, this is a kind of game where you can, I guess, not have it affect you like that kind of blockout, but there is absolutely no way you're not going to hear any of the noise because it is constantly around you. You're walking down the street or with, anybody, anyone you run into is going to bring up this game to you. This is just, it is just part of the culture, the life here. It's just important to so many fans and so many people. So I think the amount of talk leading up to that game, as opposed to any other game, uh, probably opened their eyes a little bit. So they understand. And both Will Lee, because he talked about, he had a little bit of hate of them back in Kansas State, and Reed Adams. They both use the word hate, and it's it's a sports hate. Say what you mean. Maybe it's not a however you define hatred, but they're
Yeah, my mom always taught me don't say the word hate. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And that's fair. It's a strong word. So we're not talking about real hate. We're talking about just good old fashioned rivalry. Hate on the field. So they both brought that word up. So I think they are starting to understand what this rivalry really means. And for them, this year, it's just extra important because, like you said, they win. They're in the SEC title game. That's something they've never done before. They want to do that, and if you do that, you probably have a first round bye in the playoff, which would be huge. So there's a lot riding on this game. Just if nothing, beating your rival, but just all the implications that go behind it too.
Yeah, we're talking to KBTX sports director Tyler Shaw right now. Tyler, let's dig a little bit deeper about this game particularly, right? I feel like last year, watching the game, I tell people all the time, A&M could not move the football. It was impossible for them to even get a first down at times. And so where do you feel like has been the biggest difference with this year's team? And is it the evolution of Marcel Reed? Is it the receivers coming on? Concepcion doing his thing. Where do you feel like has been the biggest step? And where do you feel like they could maybe cause trouble for UT this time around?
So Marcel has taken a step, but he has matured as a quarterback. But if I were to give an MVP of this team, I would split it actually two ways. It would be Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. They're two transfer wide receivers. I don't know if there's been two transfers that have had such an impact on a team this year, because they have completely just revamped this offense. A&M hasn't had receivers like this in maybe a decade. It's been that electric. And it's really just telling of the lack of receivers that they've had in the past, because these two guys have just opened things up. The yards after the catch for Mario Craver, he is so elusive, just hard to bring down. Casey comes, they're both so fast. That's going to be the biggest thing. I know, Texas, that secondary is probably going to welcome this challenge. But it's going to be tough, because if you try to just lock down one of the guys, they have another. And in the last few weeks coming out has been Ashton Bethel Roman as the real number 3, who's had great games. And he hasn't been as consistent as these guys. Like earlier in the season, he's had a lot of drops. He's kind of been that guy. If someone makes a mistake, it's probably coming from that side of the field. But he's incredibly athletic, makes it just, catches. You're like, how did he do that? So the fact that they've got, a legit number 3 now, it's scary. But it's not like it's an air raid either. They're a balanced offense. So you got to respect the run. Ruben Owens is a baller. So that's where they're going to have tough, is like, how do you can't sell all in to stop the run because you got those guys. You can't just lock down KC because you got a couple other receivers. I think that's going to be Texas's biggest challenge, is finding on the defense where they're going to focus on really trying to shut down. And honestly, they're probably not going to just shut them down. It's going to be slow them down a little bit, but where are we going to find ways to respond?
Yeah, you talked about the college football playoff implications, maybe a bye week if Texas A&M does win this game, or even goes out and wins the SEC championship. But I'm curious, from your perspective, unbiased opinion, if Texas does win, do they deserve to get into the playoff in your opinion?
So that's a tough one. I think there's a real shot. I mean, there's a lot of chatter about that. And again, yeah, that would be why this game is big for both teams because
Mm-hmm.
Texas already played their way out. They're not in the title game, but they could have a shot of getting in the top 12. And it's interesting. They moved up one spot to 16. It's still,
But they got jumped by Michigan, which I spoke about earlier in the pod. I don't understand.
yeah,
That made no sense to me at all. But
no, that doesn't. So when I'm trying to look at it from the committee's perspective, I don't know if 16 is close to because you're going to have a group of 5 that jumps in
yeah, you
and
basically
the
gonna be at number
ACC
10.
champ.
I think 10's
Yeah, so you
the
have to be at 10. So being at 11 and 12 is no man's land. You're going to fall out. So jumping 6 spots, that's gonna be difficult. I think they could deserve to get in. I think they're gonna need some help though. You're gonna need someone like Vanderbilt, lose, and BYU and some of those other teams. So yeah, I don't know if winning outright is enough to say they should get in. Because
they'll need help.
but they'll need help. I do think they all though. If you look at 3 loss teams, they have the best case. They're the strongest 3 loss team in the country right now. And eye tests and everything and what they do. It'd be easy if you could take that Florida loss away. Then
Yeah, I mean,
it'd be easy. But it's
if you
just
take that Florida loss away, everything's Gucci, But then the
yeah,
question is, I feel like if you take the Ohio State loss away, are
right.
you,
And that's the
you
thing too is like
know,
they shouldn't be knocked for losing to Ohio State, like because we might be having a different conversation if they beat UTSA week 1.
exactly.
You have 2 losses, so that's why I do think they are the toughest 3, the strongest 3-loss team in the country. Because yeah, can you really knock them for scheduling Ohio State and playing a close game with them early in the season?
The
And
closest, by the way, from anybody else on their schedule.
right, and that was week 1. I think Texas has gotten better.
Yeah.
Again, that Florida game, I don't know. Like that was
No one does. No one does, bro. We don't even know here, bro. I have no idea what happened.
Yeah. So I think they could. I think they could deserve to get in. I just if there's too many 2-loss teams ahead of them, like I don't know how you could justify it without a little bit of help of a couple teams losing. But yeah, it should be. I think that they're still capable. Arch seems like he's playing a lot better now, and they
Arch
could
is
be
becoming
someone
the guy.
that makes a run if they have a chance. I think.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Arch is, and it's something I've been preaching for weeks now. It's like it's a young offense. They need time. They need time to
Yeah.
grow. Now their time has run out. Season's
Right.
over, and so you have one more game left to kind of prove it. And I feel like it just took a little bit too much time. Now some of it played a factor was injuries. You talked about the Florida game. That was the first game with Emmett Mosley, who's caught that big touchdown against Mississippi State, and had a big play against Kentucky. And so a guy like that who wasn't able to play any of the non-conference games, wasn't able to do any of the offseason with a young quarterback, stuff like that piles up. And so now everyone's healthy, all the receivers are, but it just took a minute. And so
Yeah,
I think it
yeah.
maybe took a little bit too long for this offense. But a couple more for you before you go, Tyler. I know you got to go. Second to last question, I guess I should say. When it comes to the defensive side of the ball for A&M, who's
Yeah.
someone that stands out and that's someone that could cause havoc for Arch Manning in this offense?
Cassius Howell, dude is a menace. He can get to the quarterback. He second in the country now. I think he's 11 and a half sacks. He's a beast. He's kind of A&M had a lot of great defensive linemen last year. They had 3 go to the NFL.
Shamar?
Yeah. You had Shamar, you had Nick Scorton. So they had some dudes. They had names, and NFL talent, but they have a lot more production from that line this year, and it's because of Cassius Howell. He is kind of one of those. If you were with the team and everything and around, like he didn't come by surprise, but I think to a national audience, he just kind of caught the world by storm, and he is. I go back to I know this is early in the year, but against Utah State, he had 3 sacks. I called it the sack trick. 3 sacks in a row. Literally, he had a fourth down, a 3 and out, all on his own, all sacks on the quarterback. I don't know why they didn't hand the ball off, but it was insane. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. And we're out there shooting on the field, so it happened like right kind of where I am, in my camera's view. It is just one after another. He's just capable of that kind of stuff. Obviously, Texas is going to game plan for him and try to kind of close him out, but they got other guys like Deion Hayes and Albert Regis can kind of come in. But Cassius Howell, that's going to be the guy that causes the most problems. And honestly, I think that's going to be the difference of the game. If Texas can protect Arch, they've got a great shot at winning. But I think the defensive line, and with Texas's offensive line not being as strong as it was last year, I think that could kind of be the difference in this game. So, and then so that's the defense line is going to be the biggest thing for A&M. Their secondary is better than it was last year too.
Gotcha.
That was their biggest weakness last year. Is they just let people throw all over them. They've gotten better at locking down a little bit. Granted, I still think Texas will be able to move the ball a little bit. But they have improved from last year.
Yeah, you talk about the O line for Texas. They've improved too. I will say that. I think they finally found their 5 guys. They've been rotating guys in and out, especially interior and that guard center guard spot. But now I feel like they understand who those 5 guys that they went up there. And last week, they had a pretty good pocket for Arch throughout the whole game against Arkansas, and then Vanderbilt that game as well. So Georgia, that's a tough one. But I will say this: that offensive line has improved. So you're right. That's going to be a big time matchup. O line versus D line. Before I let you go, Tyler, I gotta ask you without letting you go.
Yeah.
Any update on the state trooper?
So he was let go. I know that.
Of the game or like of the game, right?
No, like the
department.
The department after. So
didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So there is that. Try not to be a fool on national television. I thought it was good. After I forgot what game it was, but that next week someone scored and ran up and shook the state trooper's hand that was there in the end zone. I was like,
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah, I forget which game it was, but it was pretty funny. It was like, oh, this needs to be a thing now.
Well, thank you for the update. Boots on the ground, Tyler Shaw, giving us an update on the state trooper has been let go. All right then. Appreciate it, T. Thank you so much for your time, bro. I know you got a lot going on, so I'll let you go now. Can't wait for Friday. You're gonna be there, right? I'm guessing.
Yep. Yeah, we'll be up there. We'll see you, Corey, man. That'll be a good one.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the insight, man. You brought a lot today. Appreciate you.
Yep. Thanks.
Again, I appreciate Tyler for hopping on. Really didn't have to do that. But like he said, one of the big time things to look out for on Friday night will be that Texas A&M defensive line versus the offensive line for Texas. Can UT hold up against that menacing defensive line for A&M? And for the last couple of weeks, they've done a pretty good job. The UTO line has done a great job when it comes to protecting Arch and giving him time. But this is a different animal when it comes to this A&M D line. They had some struggles against Georgia, but honestly, not as much as last year, if we're being honest. And so will that momentum continue to Friday night? We'll see. And that O-line versus D-line trenches warfare, I also discussed that with 24/7 Sports Eric Henry in our conversation. I appreciate him for taking the time. I texted him literally today, seeing if he can hop on. And, of course, that's the Brody. So he said yes. So I appreciate him for taking that time. But here's our conversation about the Lone Star Showdown. All right, beautiful people. As y'all know, I usually don't do this, right? I usually just go with the team that is facing Texas and bring somebody onto the podcast. But it's a big-time week, day after Thanksgiving. So we got to pull out the big-time players to make big-time plays. And that's my boy Eric Henry from 24/7 Sports. E-Hen, what you doing? How you feeling today? Everything good?
Man, you talk about big time players making big time plays. You talk about Corey Mose. Everyone knows there's one big time player in the Austin market, and you're looking at him right here. It's Corey Mose. That's the big time player right there. We just we role players trying to play our role, man.
Here you go. Hey, look, man. When it comes to the football and basketball, now you need some like duos. Texas got number 16s on both sides of the field. You could be my counterpart. You know what I'm saying? We could do it together.
Listen, I'm good with that. I mean, listen, we've done it on KVU before. We've done it on KVU. I think pass the rock, it'd be a little LeBron D Wade action, at the alley. I'm good with that.
Hey, best dap up in local television history, by the way.
Correct.
If you haven't seen it, gotta go check it out on Twitter and on the social platforms. But Eric, let's get into it, man. Don't want to hold you too long, so let's get straight into what's happening on Friday night, Texas versus A&M. A couple of things stood out to me with the press conferences and even just leading up to this game is a lot of talk about Arch and how he's been able to progress and kind of just get through the mental fortitude of everything that's going on within week 1 all the way up to now. And so, do you feel like Arch is kind of ready for this moment, big time stage again, under the lights against A&M?
Corey, I'm so glad I'm talking to someone who's in the local market, because you do enough of these spots and you talk to people from outside the Austin area, and it's either been one of two things, right? It's been, well, what's wrong with Arch? Is he a bust? Is he just a name? Or it's the complete opposite, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, why is he suddenly playing so well? What's going on? So on and so forth. Here's the thing, right? Arch Manning is like any other 5-star quarterback prospect coming out in this era of quarterbacks, right? Highly talented, but probably needs some sort of development. I understand some people might say, oh, well, he wasn't a true freshman, right? He's a third-year player. That is true. But I think those of us who covered Texas in spring camp, in fall camp, saw a player who, again, highly gifted, but needed the reps. I don't know if you saw it this way, Corey, and I promise I'll eventually get to, kind of the crux of your question. But for me, when we would hear about, the defense got the better of the offense, I think I viewed it through the prism of, well, that's a really good defense. So of course the offense may have some bad days. Is typically offense takes a little while, longer than defense to kind of find its footing and gel. And of course, Texas was bringing in so many new players compared to the last 2 years. In actuality, that part was true, while also understanding that, yes, Arch Manning needed the reps. He only had 2 career starts entering the season. So, answer your question, where I kind of land on it is, yes, the offensive line, the change, moving Cole Hudson to left guard, having your most veteran group going senior across the interior left guard, center, right guard with Cole Hudson, Connor Robertson, and DJ Campbell. That has certainly helped. But also, Arch Manning, the game is just slowing down for him. And I'll pass it back to you on this. I remember asking Steve Sarkisian after, I believe it was the UTEP game. I said, Steve, it can't get any worse than this, right? Now, little did I know the Kentucky game would happen. And I guess in theory, it could have gotten a little worse. But I said, Steve, for a quarterback, is it a little bit freeing knowing that you've played your worst game? So you can only go up from here. And Steve said, yeah, it is really freeing, and he looks forward to seeing how things fare for Arch when it comes out the other side. Well, now Arch Manning is out on the other side of this. I think he's playing, realistically his best football of his career, right around start 13 of his career. So it all lines up with this.
Yeah, you talked about reps, and I think that's something that I'm right there with you, bro. When I go on these different, broadcasts, whether it's in Dallas or talking to people in Houston, and they're like, what's going on with Arch? I'm just like, well, let's look at everything around him. There's not a lot of reps with the people around him. And so, yes, he needs reps, but he also needs reps with the receivers and the running backs, because at the time when he was struggling, no Emmett Mosley at the time. And then when Emmett comes back, Parker Livingston gets hurt, DeAndre Moore is hurt, and then Ringo gets hurt, and then CJ Baxter's hurt for a game, but then Weiss is hurt, and so there wasn't a continuity with reps of all the starters until we got to like the middle of the conference play. And so that's why I feel like now you're seeing the progression in this offense, because now they're back. Everybody's back and healthy, and you have those not just game reps, but practice reps as well with all the starters. And so you're totally right. Like, it just takes time. It's a young offense, and I feel like a lot of people, they had those expectations, and then when you don't meet them in week 1, it's like, oh, this guy's a bust. It's like, no, he just needs reps with himself and reps with the people around him. But now, like you mentioned, that interior offensive line as well, they're playing well. But I know one thing that could be worrisome is that College Station, Texas A&M D-line, and so what are some things that you feel like Texas A&M can do well that maybe can cause some troubles on either side of the ball for Texas on Friday night?
No, well, let's start. You talked about the Texas A&M defensive line. Corey, this game is going to be won in one of two places, either in the trenches, or I should say both, in the trenches or on special teams. I'll come to special teams in a second. Texas's offensive line, we talk about the struggles they've had this year. Entering this game, you're talking about the teams that are second and third in the nation in sacks. Texas A&M is second, Texas is third. Now, Texas A&M has a really talented offensive line that's only allowed 7 sacks all year. I believe that's 11th or 12th. I can't remember which one where they landed right now. 11th or 12th in the nation in fewest sacks allowed. That's a clear advantage towards Texas A&M. Now, the Longhorns offensive line, as we noted, has improved with that switch, so we'll see if they can rise to the occasion. But to your point, yes, Texas A&M's defensive line, and their front seven as a whole, has been playing great football. And I think for Texas, a key, we've talked about it week after week after week, is Texas's ability to run the football. entering this week.
Or inability to do so.
Inability. So yeah, it's probably a better word. Inability. Texas is averaging just over 77 yards per game in SEC play on the ground. It's bad. There's no two ways about that, right? So that certainly is something to keep an eye on. Something that A&M does well. Marcel Reed, and of course, I'm sure you'll get to him in a second, but Marcel Reed is playing lights out football. One of the stats I would point to Longhorn fans watching this is yards per completion. He's tied for third in the nation, averaging 14.6 yards per completion. You compare that with his yards per attempt, which is actually right around 9. You don't have to be a football genius to know that means he's getting the ball in the hands of his playmakers and they're taking care of business, right? Not saying he's dinking and dunking because he still has the ability to push it downfield, but yards per attempt 9, yards per completion 14.5. That means his guys are getting the ball and making things happen with it. Real quick on special teams, keep an eye on this. I think Texas fans know this as well as anybody, right? You take a look at last year's SEC title game. I hate to boil things down to 1 or 2 kicks because there's so many plays that happen in a game, but you can make the case that Texas lost an SEC title last year because Bert Auburn couldn't put the ball through the uprights. This year, Texas A&M is the team that is having some shaky issues. Randy Bond was their starting kicker. I believe this is Bond's 4th year as the starting kicker, primary starting kicker, but he actually, lost his job, went back and forth with a transfer that A&M brought in. Randy Bond is 11 of 18 on the season. So for whatever reason, if this is a game that comes down to field goals, I think that's an edge for Texas.
That's something definitely to look out for because Mason Shipley, he's been pretty solid. He's been worth the money transferring over from Texas State with at least anything within 50 yards. Now, past 50 yards, getting a little shaky. But Sarkisian knows his range. But I also want to just go back to Marcel for a little bit. One thing I just want to ask, do you feel like this offense that A&M has, and with the defensive miscommunications that the secondary at UT has had, is that kind of worrisome, knowing that they can take those deep shots or even, like you said, not dink and dunk, but just get into your playmakers' hands? And counter second part of that question, is Marcel Reed one of your Heisman finalists in your opinion?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part of that. It's not even necessarily him pushing it over the defense's head. It's, and I, cheap plug here, I wrote this story, actually it's posted today up on horns247.com. It's about eye discipline, Corey. Here's the thing, right? If you're a safety, and I asked both Jelani McDonald and Michael Taft this question as the last line of defense, how crucial is eye discipline against a quarterback who's a dual threat, who has shown this year he's more willing to escape the pocket to throw as opposed to looking to run? And the thing that both Taft and Jelani said is, yeah, you got to have eye discipline and you got to hope that your front four does their job and trust that they do their job, because naturally you might want to creep up. You might want to go make the play on a Marcel Reed, but you still had a guy to cover. And Taft said, hey, it's tricky to cover a guy for 7, 8, 9 seconds. Same thing with Jelani. If you take a look back, here's a number for you. Texas has allowed 27 pass plays of 15 yards or more in over the last 3 weeks, right? What's the common denominator there, Corey? All dual threat quarterbacks. Gunnar Stockton, escaping, looking to throw the ball. Diego Pavia, of course, a little bit more of a runner, but he had, if my memory serves correct, Vanderbilt had 12 pass plays of 15 yards or more. The majority of those were Diego Pavia escaping the pocket and then getting the ball downfield. Same thing with Taylon Green and KJ Jackson last week. So when you talk about Marcel Reed and kind of what makes him dangerous in that threat, for Texas's defense, I think you are going to want to get home with 4 and then, selectively blitz, but also making sure when Marcel escapes that pocket, that the secondary, they aren't losing their guys. When man turns into zone coverage because of the scramble, or when zone turns into man cover, make sure you're not losing your guy, because that's how you end up with those plays, those chunk plays. Now, the second part of your question, yes, Marcel Reed is one of my Heisman candidates. Now, Corey, I don't want to derail the show. I know you can ask me who are my Heisman candidates. There's 2 ways I'm going to answer this, right? So I guess I can kind of combine this into one.
I'm interested.
Heisman candidates, you have to go with Marcel Reed. You have to go with Julian Sain. My issue is this.
Julian up there.
I think you have to go with Julian Sain. Fernando Mendoza, of course. My issue is this. There is the Davey O'Brien Award, which is for the best quarterback in the nation. There is the Maxwell Award for the best player in the nation. And then there's the Heisman, the best offensive player. And then there's the Heisman, which is to the best player in the nation, right? Why is the Heisman suddenly just a quarterback award? Or I shouldn't say suddenly, because historically, you look over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of quarterbacks. But I just think there's so many great players, like a Caleb Allen, for example.
Yeah.
Right?
Why is he not even talked about?
Not even talked about, right? Ndamukong Suh this year is legendarily at Nebraska. The year he was 2009 should have been a Heisman candidate because he just was a game wrecker. It's for the best player in college football. You're talking about best player, right? So that kind of frustrates me. But that aside, yeah, it's a quarterback.
I do want to throw one more name out there.
Go for it.
Jacob Rodriguez, Texas Tech. I love watching him play. And I mean, I believe he has more forced fumbles than 8 of the top 10 teams right now, like as a team. Like he has more by himself. And so like that's the type of stuff I'm just like, why is he not in the conversation? Why is he not talking about going to New York? Because this is a guy that's on a team that only has one loss, leading a defense that is making probably the biggest flip in the country from what they were last year to this year, and he's leading it. So I'm right there with you. Like, why is that guy not in this conversation as well when it comes to the Heisman? And why is this Heisman turning into kind of like what the NFL is with the MVP? Like, it just makes no sense to me. But continue. I'll let you go.
No, I mean, you nailed it. You brought it home because that's just kind of my hot take. I mean, those are the guys who I think will be in it. But I just think the Heisman Trophy should be the best player in college. If there's a left tackle, if this was a Kelvin Banks, who let's just say went an entire season without allowing a sack in the SEC and faced some of the best edge rushers, why shouldn't he be in the conversation?
It's a good point. I wonder, is there who would make that change? You know what I'm saying? Like, who can be? Is it the voters? Is it the media? Is it our job? You know, to kind of start putting more people out there like that. Like, I'm wondering who can make that change. But I'm sure we may be too far gone at this point.
No, I mean it's probably it's probably far gone. But I think it's a combination of things. I think the media, right? Here's the thing. I say the media, right? We always hate that when we say the media, right? Yeah. But the media, the broader college football media, it tends to revolve around storylines, right? And those storylines tend to revolve around quarterbacks. They're just the most popular position. Yeah. Unless if you're going to change it, it's going to need to spotlight just different positions. Simple as that to me.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because there are a lot of great players out there. A lot of great players. A lot of great teams that we saw Tuesday night playoffs rankings came out. Just initial thoughts, and then I'll ask you a follow-up.
Initial thoughts, about what I expected, from the Texas side of things. Again, some people would say, well, why, did Vanderbilt kind of ascend considering, nothing really changed as far as that's concerned? And kind of, you look at the head-to-head with Texas. Listen, this is all, I think we can agree, Corey, that based on the current system, there could be a little bit more transparency in terms of how the voters are the committee is coming to where they land. With that being said, I'm old enough to remember when the BCS was a thing, right?
Yeah.
Here's the formula.
Horrible.
It horrible, but at least you had a dedicated formula. It wasn't one person coming out saying this, one person coming out saying that, and the chairman of the committee doing 6-7. Like, what are you doing, my guy?
That was so weird, by the way. It's like, bro, you're too grown to be doing all that, bro. What are we talking about?
Correct. So I guess to answer your question, there weren't any real surprises to me. But I think it's gonna be interesting to see how this field plays out. And what I'm more interested in is, how many teams do you take, right? Does the ACC representative truly get left out, right? That's a storyline. And how many teams do you take from the SEC?
So if Texas wins,
yes.
Is there an argument you feel like they should get in?
No.
Okay. Why is that?
Because you lost to Florida. You lost to a bad Florida team, which, again, see, this is kind of my frustration. This isn't going to be a popular answer with Longhorn fans. Sure, everyone's going to point to the loss against Ohio State and say, why would I schedule Ohio State? That is a fair discussion, especially with the SEC moving to a 9-game conference schedule. That is true. However, in the current format, simply take care of the games you're supposed to take care of. That is a bad loss. And some people would say, well, Texas lost to Georgia by 25 points. And I've heard people say, oh, well, it was a 4-point game entering the fourth quarter. Well, it was, but we saw what happened. All right. Georgia completely outclassed Texas in the fourth quarter. Don't lose to Georgia by 25 points. If that game ends up being a 17-13 game, Corey, I think we have a different discussion entering this week if they beat A&M. But I'm sorry, you cannot escape that Florida loss, which was a bad loss, plain and simple.
And so my counter argument, this is just, I'm sure people listening to this podcast will be saying this, but you have a team like Michigan, right? If they go out and beat Ohio State, Lord knows if that's actually going to happen. But if they do, then they will be considered in this conversation again. And so they also have not a great win, except for that would be the Ohio State win. But in this situation, Texas would also have a great win in A&M. And so they jumped Texas for some reason. I didn't understand why they jumped Texas in the rankings. But again, you have a team where you probably didn't schedule anybody tough in the non-conference. They lost to Oklahoma in the non-conference. And so to me, it's the same argument, right? You lose to a team outside your conference early in the year. You get a big-time win at the end of the year. And you also have a loss in conference that you shouldn't have lost to. And I think Michigan has the same exact resume that Texas has. But, of course, it's getting the same recognition. If they beat Ohio State, I hear a lot of people saying they should be in, which you beat the number 1 team in the country, I get it. But in this scenario, Texas would beat the number 3 team in the country. So what are we talking about? So I think the committee put themselves in a tough spot, because who's to say, like, what if Vanderbilt blows out Tennessee? We start talking about that conversation. What if Washington beats Oregon? I think that's a situation that no one's really talking about. In Washington, by the way, which is a hostile environment. I like Damon Williams Jr. a lot. And so if they go out and beat Oregon, now you have a 2-loss Oregon who also lost to Indiana. Do they get in? Like, there's a question if Oregon gets in if they lose on Saturday. So I think the committee, they put themselves in a very sticky situation if things kind of do go crazy. And I'm excited to see how they decide who that last spot would go to if chaos does ensue, because now you're going to set a precedent. Should people schedule tough games non-conference, or should they not? And their decision is going to base off of that. So I'm excited to see that. I'm also excited to see on Friday night how everything plays down. One last question for you. What do you think it's going to take for kind of Texas to win again against A&M on Friday night?
I think this game, as I said, boils down to 3 things. One, can Texas win at the line of scrimmage? If Texas's offensive line can at least keep Arch Manning upright and kind of, to a situation where he's not having to scramble incessantly, I think Arch Manning has shown enough over the last month and change of play that he can pick apart a defense. I think that's real. Second, penalties. Texas has been a horribly sloppy team all season.
What do you think that is, by the way? Because it's not just this season, right? I feel like the last couple seasons they've been pretty high in penalty rate.
They've kind of trended, kind of up and down over the last few years, but this year it's just gotten completely out of hand. My opinion is I think it's a combination of a lot of younger guys, I shouldn't say young, inexperienced guys stepping into new roles, and they are committing penalties. But the offensive line, it's just been the false starts, the holdings, those things have been tough. So penalties, you have to be able to tamp that down. I would put the over-under at 5. That's kind of my thing for Friday night's game. Lastly, can Texas at least run the football to stay balanced? If they can, that'll help their chances. If they can't, they're going to be one-dimensional. That's going to allow the Texas A&M pass rushes pin their ears back and rush the quarterback.
What did Sark say? If we got to just throw it around and win, we'll throw it around and win.
What he said.
I just don't know. I don't know if they could do that though. I don't know if they have the firepower, and maybe they do. Maybe they believe in themselves after that Arkansas game that they do. I said one last question, but I just want to get your take on one more thing. Okay. What is something that stood out to you from Monday's presser? Something in particular that maybe comes to mind, or you're like, okay, leave that in the back of my mind. Anybody said anything that kind of stood out to you? Sorry, Corey.
I think Corey. I know you got a chance to see the presser. That was one of those situations where it's Thanksgiving week, so the guys are out of school. They're kind of rushed a little bit because they're practicing in the afternoon, which meant they were breaking film to come talk to us. So it was rushed all the way around. A lot of guys were like, "Hey, we got to get back to watching film." I can't think of anything noteworthy that stood out that was just truly like, keep that in the back of my mind. There's some things I would want to come back to Steve Sarkisian after the season. I'll leave you with this. This wasn't said this week, but this is something that is an overarching thing, right? At the beginning of the season, Steve Sarkisian said at SEC Media Days, believe championship level team, championship level roster, right? Entering this week, Texas is not going to play for an SEC title, and they're on the outside looking in of playing for, even having a chance to play for a national title. If Texas does not do any of those things, I want to ask Steve Sarkisian, hey, do you still believe that, in fact, the roster was championship level? If it wasn't, why do you think that was? Or if it was championship level, what impeded the team from reaching said goals. That's something I want to come back to Steve Sarkisian with. Not maybe post game, but definitely in the near future.
Hey, that's why he is one of the best in the business, Eric Henry, asking the important questions and thinking ahead. That's why I respect you and your work, bro. 24/7 Sports. Oh, speaking about work, what is the latest work that you want people to tap into?
Yeah, as I mentioned, that piece directly up right now at horns247.com talking about the eye discipline that's going to be needed to, if you're going to have a chance to slow Marcel Reed, Texas's DB, Jelani McDonald, Michael Taft talking about eye discipline. That's up at horns247.com. Keeping out for my Sunday column, 4 Downs. That's out every Sunday. And of course, the game covers, the podcast, everything's up horns247.com and on socials at Eric C. Henry _.
He's everywhere, folks. He is everywhere. Go and tap into my boy E. Hen. All right, dog. Thank you so much for your time, G.
Yes, sir.
All right, beautiful people. I appreciate Eric Henry for hopping on one more time again, taking the time out of his day to discuss this matchup. And so one last thing before we go, of course, I kind of hinted at it at the beginning of the podcast, but at the crib this week for Thanksgiving, and so thankful that I have the time to be at the crib and chill with the parents. And speaking of the parents, Mama Mose is in the building. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, wave at the crowd. Wave at the crowd.
Hello, everyone. All the football fans.
Awesome. So my mom, she's actually done pretty well when it comes to these game predictions. And so I figured, why not ask her score prediction for this Lone Star Showdown on Friday night. So, Mom, what do you think is going to happen Friday, and what do you think the score is going to be?
It's going to be a great game, I can tell you that. I know A&M is going to try to stay undefeated, and I know UT would like to be the first ones to knock them out this year. So since they're playing at UT, I'm going to say 30-33. So that's my prediction.
High scoring game, huh?
I hope it will be, but it's going to definitely be a defensive game. I can tell you that right now.
Okay. Defense wins championships, and defense probably going to need a big-time stop at the end of the game. 33-30. Texas takes it, according to Mama Mose.
Yes, I'm only saying that because they're going to be at home.
Okay. Home field advantage. That's respect, though. Respect. Home field advantage. 33-30. Mama thinks Texas is going to take it. So, yeah, I can't wait to see how this all boils down on Friday night. Hate to have to leave y'all, though, early in the morning on Friday. But your boy got to work, got to earn that paycheck. You feel me? But, yeah, appreciate y'all for listening in to Mose Knows. Man, I'm so thankful that y'all do. Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, comment, like, subscribe. Please. And Mom, you want to say bye to people?
Happy Thanksgiving. Everyone be safe. Bye.
All right. Appreciate y'all.